A new world order. A new world order. A new world order.
And we are, as a people, opposed to secret societies.
This is extremely dangerous to democracy.
What's up, guys? Thanks for listening to Truth Decay. I'm your host, One Concerned American, and on this episode, we're going to get into the second video on a series about how secret societies actually tore this country apart and helped cause the American Civil War. In this video, we're going to cover abolitionists and how anti-slavery people actually caused a lot of agitation that led to the war. But before we get into it, I want to advise that you please go back and watch this video I've made about the Knights of the Golden Circle. If you don't know anything about this secret society, its avowed purpose was basically to build a slaveholding empire that extended from the South into Mexico, down through Latin America and Cuba. And there were people north and south that were involved with the Knights of the Golden Circle. So it was a conspiracy, big time. And in this video, I'm going to show you how the anti-slavery people and the abolitionists were tied up with just as many secret societies and conspiracies. So let's go ahead and hop into this. Now, the first person I want to cover is William Lloyd Garrison. He's the egghead that you see here on the right. And the man on the left, his name was actually George Thompson. Now, these two had connections going back to the 1830s. William Lloyd Garrison would visit England, and he was privileged to go around and speak at different lyceums, and George Thompson would actually visit the United States, and William Lloyd Garrison would tour him around. And these two stayed in close contact for most of their lives, and this is actually showing you how William Lloyd Garrison is actually connected to international socialism, because if you study the Chartists, they were basically a group of Englishmen that were looking to expand kind of socialist ideas and workers' rights and things like that. William Lloyd Garrison, as I will show you, was inspired by foreign agents and did have a great hand in bringing this country apart. If you have any doubts about this, ladies and gentlemen, just take a look at his newspaper here that was called The Liberator. Notice the masthead of the paper actually says, "Our country is the world, our countrymen are mankind." And this is basically a slogan endorsing the one world government, ladies and gentlemen. And this is straight out of the goals of the Illuminati. If you study the Illuminati, you know that it was founded in Bavaria by Adam Weishaupt in 1776. And amongst world order, they also have goals of abolishing religion, destroying the family, getting rid of patriotism, private property, things like that. So it's not a coincidence that William Lloyd Garrison is connected to all these rich people across Europe. He was traveling, giving speeches on slavery and hating on America overseas. And he also has a newspaper that promotes the idea of a world government. You need to wake up and actually study the history, ladies and gentlemen. Now, if you really get into William Lloyd Garrison, you will find that he was actually all about leaving the Union and all about secession until it actually happened and until the South actually tried to do it. For example, here you can see a cartoon that portrays William Lloyd Garrison actually shaking hands with a secessionist. And actually, if you go back and study, when John Brown was executed, William Lloyd Garrison delivered a eulogy where he said, by dissolving the Union, they could actually destroy the slave system. And I will show you that even farther back than this, William Lloyd Garrison supported leaving the Union. So this man, up until the Civil War, was all about the northern states leaving the Union to destroy slavery. But then when the opportunity actually came to dissolve the Union, he became a super patriot and supported the North. He's a hypocrite. You also need to go and look at the organizations that William Lloyd Garrison started. For example, he founded the American Anti-Slavery Society. And if you look at this magazine on the right, you'll notice that it has the twin pillars and all-seeing eye symbolism. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody was able to do a lot of research if they would find that William Lloyd Garrison was somehow being directed by people associated with Freemasonry. I mean, the symbols are there. His actions are right in line with the Freemasons that we have proven time and time again are pushing for a world government. So I think the connection is there for anybody who would be willing to dive in and study that material. Additionally, If you go back to 1857 and study this disunion convention that occurred in Massachusetts, you'll find that William Lloyd Garrison gave a speech about breaking away from the United States and was all in favor of it. We also find that John Brown was in attendance at this convention, as well as Francis Bird, who hosted an elite supper club in Massachusetts where big-time political deals were made, donations were made, socialist ideas were discussed, and so on. And I'm going to actually read you a few excerpts from this disunion convention. Just listen to what William Lloyd Garrison said, ladies and gentlemen. You'll see he noted that men do not change. They must be placed in a trying emergency. They must feel a strong moral obligation pressing upon them. They must clearly perceive some great impending evil to be shunned, whether it be a physical revolution attended with the shedding of human blood, or a moral revolution attended with the loss of friends and popularity, and the sacrifice of worldly interests. So you can see here in this speech, he's actually talking about, hey, some people might have to die to end slavery. Going on, you see he says, if therefore disunion be a matter of slow growth, as it is, I am sure it is a true growth, and that everything is gained thereby. I expect it will go on slowly gathering to itself friends and advocates, until at last it shall culminate in an all-pervading northern sentiment, and the great work be easily accomplished. You can see a little further on, he says, the time has come for us to throw off the yoke and declare ourselves free and independent. Further on, he says, and this is in the third paragraph you see here on this page, Garrison states, again, I am for the overthrow of the Union, because of the avowed determination of the South to extend and perpetuate her accursed slave system ad infinitum. Now, if you really study the history, we know it was a combination of the North and South compromising. And if you study my video on the Knights of the Golden Circle, you know that there were Northerners that were white supremacists that did support slavery. So it was a problem with the whole system, not just with the South. But you can see William Lloyd Garrison multiple times in this speech calls for bloodshed, revolution, and not just secession, but overthrowing the Union, ladies and gentlemen. This is what we call sedition here. All right. Now, where this gets interesting is that, again, you need to go back and watch my video on the Knights of the Golden Circle if you haven't, because George Bickley, the man who founded it, he was born in Virginia but lived in Ohio at the time he founded this, and there were many Northerners that supported the Knights of the Golden Circle. But this group is actually connected to another secret society called the Brotherhood of the Union, which was led by a man named George Lippard, who was also on the Rosicrucian Council of Three. Abraham Lincoln was a member of the Rosicrucians on the Council of Three. So you can see that William Lloyd Garrison is also a member of the Brotherhood of the Union. Now think about this, ladies and gentlemen. There's one large group, the Brotherhood of the Union. And then out of that group, you will find two conspiracies. A conspiracy to spread slavery, led by George Bickley and the Knights of the Golden Circle, and a conspiracy to destroy slavery by any means necessary, being led by men like William Lloyd Garrison. And this is what you really will discover when you start studying conspiracies, is that there is a small group of elites that pull the strings on both sides, and they create these events to get the reaction that they want. It's called the Hegelian dialectic, ladies and gentlemen. This is how they keep us divided. And there were foreigners that were involved in this agitation because they did not want the United States to be a strong country. It's not a coincidence that the strongest anti-slavery personalities and the strongest pro-slavery personalities were members of the same secret societies. Come on, folks. Wake up. Now, the next person we're going to talk about is John Brown. A lot of people know that John Brown is pretty widely perceived as either a hero or a terrorist. You can see this is a painting depicting his execution, or just before his execution. He's being led to the gallows and you see him kissing a small black child, which is totally propaganda. John Brown was a murderer, possibly a psychopath. If you go back and study the Bleeding Kansas days, John Brown was going around with his sons and they were killing people who were pro-slavery. And I'm not saying that the pro-slavery people weren't violent. Okay, I'm sure that there was violence on both sides. If you study Kansas, ladies and gentlemen, the Civil War was going on there before it actually happened. Okay, before South Carolina seceded, there was violence in Kansas being perpetrated by people on both sides of the slavery question. But John Brown really made a name for himself because he was especially violent. And we know sometime after this, a group began raising funds for Brown for a much larger slave insurrection. And we're going to talk about this because we all know that at Harper's Ferry, John Brown was captured and he was trying to start a slave rebellion. What a lot of people don't know, though, is that actually no slaves came to help him. When John Brown was captured, they discovered he had a constitution in his pocket that was going to make him the leader of the new black nation. This is kind of disturbing because John Brown, if you study his life, it was basically just one successive failure after another. And this man really didn't have much to lose. I mean, if you look at this cartoon here, it portrays him handing a pike to a slave, but the slave is saying, "Nope, sorry, I gotta go seed the fields." Because a lot of slaves knew that getting involved with something like this would mean sure death. And also, John Brown, the man wasn't really reliable. He wasn't very trustworthy even. So nobody came to help him. He was brought down by Robert E. Lee, as a lot of people know. Actually, the first person he killed was a free black man named Hayward Shepherd. If you go and study the night of the Harper's Ferry raid, they shot this man named Hayward Shepherd who was working on a rail car, and he was a black free man. John Brown was definitely no saint, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to show you how he was actually funded totally by people that have ties to socialism and people that were trying to bring down the United States. Take a look at this cartoon here. This is a cartoon that actually portrays Abraham Lincoln as a tyrant. You can see his foot is on the Constitution. You can see this devil holding the inkwell on the table. You can see an all-seeing eye at the center of the table. If you look at the paintings on the wall on the right, you can see a celebration of the Haitian Revolution. And then you can see a man with a pike on the left with a halo on his head. And that says Saint Osawatomie, and that's a reference to John Brown, saying that people like Lincoln, who were perfectly fine with going to war and tearing up this country, saw John Brown as a hero. Where all this gets really interesting is that John Brown had a ton of connections to secret societies and very shady people. For example, if you've ever heard of the Pinkertons, they were almost like the first Secret Service. They were some of the first private investigators, and this is where the term private eye actually comes from, because the Pinkertons used the all-seeing eye as their symbol. And if you go and study this, you'll find that John Brown actually stayed with Allan Pinkerton at some point. Allan Pinkerton helped John Brown move out to Kansas before he killed all those people there in the Potawatomi Massacre. And then we also find that during this time, Brown maintained close contact with a group of people known as the Secret Six. And I'm going to go and show you who all these people were and exactly what they were a part of. You can see here that Dr. Samuel Gridley Howe, he was a Unitarian that was involved in European revolutionary activity. So definitely not a Christian, definitely involved with the socialist uprisings of 1848. You can see that Reverend Thomas W. Higginson, he was a socialist and founded the Intercollegiate Society of Socialists in 1905, and he was the originator of the 1857 Disunion Convention. That was where we read the portions of William Lloyd Garrison promoting disunion. 4 of the members of the Secret Six were part of a radical branch of the Immigrant Aid Society called the Kansas Aid Committee. And you can go and study the people connected to this society, and you'll see that they were riding around asking for weapons because they were getting ready for something. Okay, these people were getting ready for a war because they knew that they were the ones creating the events to cause the agitation and division. Finally, Gerrit Smith was a member of Young America, and Theodore Parker was a Christian socialist. So almost every single one of these Secret Six, the people who funded John Brown, the people who were trying to foment a revolution, these people have ties to international socialism. You can't make this stuff up, folks. Now, probably the scariest thing is that John Brown is connected to the man who founded the Skull and Bones Society. If you go and study William Russell, he actually spent some time at these illuminated universities in Germany, and then he came to the United States. He founded the Skull and Bones Society, and he was actually teaching at this school, and he was drilling students in anticipation of a civil war. And then we find that John Brown actually left William Russell as one of the trustees of his will. So the man who founded Skull and Bones, one of the most secretive societies in the world, the Bush family are members, Steve Mnuchin, the Secretary of Treasury, is a member, and John Brown left the founder of that organization as the trustee of his will. So I hope some bells are going off in your head now, ladies and gentlemen. John Brown wasn't just some spontaneous white man who was just so crazy about ending slavery because he was such a kind soul. No, this man was inspired by people with money who wanted to destroy the United States and bring us into a one-world system. This is verifiable. You can go and prove this yourself very easily and duplicate all this research that I'm showing you. Finally, one of the last things I wanted to touch on was Frederick Douglass. If you go and study Frederick Douglass, this is a guy who wrote a narrative about slavery. He gave a great speech about what to the slave is the 4th of July. But at the end of the day, this man was somewhat of a radical too. Even though he wasn't like William Lloyd Garrison, he didn't go around burning the Constitution and promoting disunion. He actually did know about John Brown's raid and his plans. And we know this because when the time came to prosecute John Brown and find his associates, Frederick Douglass actually fled to Canada because he feared that he could be found guilty of abetting. So that's a true story, and you can look that up. I also wanted to point out that there was this book that came out right around the outbreak of the Civil War called The Helper's Book. The full title is The Impending Crisis of the South, How to Meet It. And you can see the quotes underneath the title. It says, "The unconditional abolition of slavery, peaceably if we can, violently if we must." And it's very clear what they're saying here. These people are okay with using violence to end slavery. Okay, which, if that's fine with you, every person has their own opinion on that. But there is a legal process. I don't agree with just killing people that you don't agree with. That's never okay. So these people were publishing these inflammatory things. You had anti-slavery people calling for violence, calling for disunion. But then when the South actually did try to break up the Union, all of them became super patriots that supported the Union. If you go and study Garrison, he was pro-Union, but then he criticized Abraham Lincoln all the time. So this guy, I believe his only purpose was just to divide Americans. I believe if you look at John Brown, I think all the evidence is there that he was a terrorist. If you go and read the Georgia Declaration of Secession, one of the main reasons that they said they were leaving the United States was because the North actually shielded the people who helped John Brown and refused to turn them over to justice. So there were rich people financing violence. There were people complicit in protecting the perpetrators of this violence. And the abolitionists are just as much to blame for the American Civil War, ladies and gentlemen. If I'm wrong, prove it. If you can give me material evidence to prove that something I said in this video is wrong, I will correct it. I want to ask if you get anything from this channel and you find this information useful to please like and share this video. Every time you like a video, it will force the YouTube algorithm to share it with more people. And I also want to ask if you can find it in your heart to give me some support, to go and check out my Patreon at patreon.com/one_concerned_American. And if you do donate anything to this channel, I will add you to my virtual library. You'll have access to all the books that I talk about in my videos, including a lot more that I haven't really got to yet, but probably have somewhere around 200 books on Freemasonry, history, religion, mind control, Illuminati, all types of secret societies. So just hit me up, check it out. If you're interested and want to know more, just drop me a comment. I really appreciate you guys, and God bless you and your families.